In this series of videos, we've been going over the profiles of different social media sites, and today these videos will focus on Twitter. So if we go back to this graph of the distribution of social networks by age, we can see that Twitter has one of the kind of more balanced, I guess, demographics that you see. The largest range of ages that are on Twitter are 25 to 34, but there's a considerable number of 18 to 24 and 35 to 44 as well. But in general, it's still a pretty decent platform to use to reach younger people and very educated people. So let's take a look at why Twitter is a top social media site, and then we'll dig more into some of their demographics. First of all, Twitter requires you to only use 140 characters. They're actually, we'll talk about this in a second, but they're actually considering upping that character limit to the tweets. But the brevity forces brands to get their message out in the clearest, most concise manner as possible. Oftentimes when we're talking about our brands or trying to write some advertising, we can get a little wordy or try to get several messages in there. But with Twitter, you don't have that luxury. You have such a finite amount of space that you really have to be concise with what you want to say. It also is a great way to engage with industry thought leaders and other influencers and see what they're reading or sharing or thinking about at any given point in time. Your customers are on Twitter, and they want to engage with you. That's their intention in many cases. I know in one instance, I actually tweeted something to Target because I was frustrated with a conflict I was having with kind of getting some stuff I had ordered online returned at the store. And they responded immediately, and I knew that if I tweeted and tagged them in my tweet that they would be most likely willing to engage with me. So it's a great way to engage. And it really is amazing when you think about how people can tweet specific, like celebrities even, and get responses. So you can actually have communication with people that you would never be able to communicate with in any other platform. Twitter also allows you to discover what's happening in real time with your customers, with your industry, what your competitors are doing, and what's going on in your community. The Arab Spring was evidence of that. I mean, almost instantly, people, the word spread about what was going on. When Osama bin Laden, the raid was happening on Osama bin Laden's compound when he was killed, the news broke because of Twitter. So that real-time, instantaneous messaging is really important as well. And Twitter also helps you increase your brand awareness, and it's a great tool for providing social media customer service, as I mentioned with my Target example. So Twitter is a great site to use because they're like Facebook. They're very helpful in helping you determine how to use their platform to better engage with your customers. So one of the things they do is they help you create engagement. So they want you to find a way to really interact with your audience. So they show you how you can use Twitter to do that, to connect with them. They show you how to target your audience, and then how to expand your reach beyond your audience to other people that are likely to want to be in your audience. And then they help you drive performance. They have a mobile app that helps you engage people where they are, on their cell phones. And they also help you figure out ways to drive traffic to your website and convert that traffic into sales. And finally, they give you tools to measure the results. They've got a great dashboard that shows you audience insights and campaign analytics, and just kind of helps you optimize your efforts for their platform. So one of the things that one of the successful brands on Twitter is Sirius. So they had this campaign where they wanted to drive ticket sales for a conference that they were having, and they really wanted to connect with those industry decision makers. So they decided to run some Twitter ads and created their campaign specifically as a website conversion campaign to drive people to the website to purchase this registration or ticket sales for this conference. So they launched the campaign with a goal of quadrupling their return on their investment, so quadrupling their ROI, and they targeted an audience of B2B industry decision makers and C-level executives. The results from their campaign, as you can see an example of one of their tweets here, was that they actually improved their ROI by 16 times instead of 4 times. So very successful campaign for them. Another successful brand on Twitter is Starbucks. This just actually shows you a snapshot of some of the ways that they engage with their customers and their followers. So as you can see here, if I clicked this, that would show you that their tweets. But you can look here and see their tweets and replies. So this basically shows the replies that Starbucks made to people who reached out and communicated to them first. So they do a great job of engaging with their customers and responding to customer service issues. But it's not just for big brands. Twitter is also useful for small businesses. And you can see that by some of their statistics that 66% of Twitter users have discovered a new small or medium-sized business on Twitter. And 94% of them said they plan to purchase from the small businesses that they follow. 69% purchased from a small business because of something that they saw on Twitter. So small businesses are really benefiting from a Twitter strategy as well as large corporations. So let's take a look at Twitter demographics. So a typical U.S. Twitter user is a man between the ages of 18 to 29, living in an urban area, who is college educated with an income of more than $50,000. Now, of course, that's a generic snapshot of what that person looks like, but that there are actually quite a few women on Twitter as well, which we'll see in a second. So the gender gap is a lot less pronounced than you would think, but the age gap actually kind of is, and so we'll look at that. But first of all, I wanted to show you this. I thought this was interesting. 79% of Twitter accounts are actually based outside of the U.S. So the majority of Twitter users aren't even in the United States. That said, there are 67 million Twitter users in the U.S. And surprisingly, the country with the highest percentage of internet users who are active on Twitter is actually Saudi Arabia. So if you look at some of the Twitter statistics, and again, these vary depending on who does the research, or if the data is a year old, it might vary dramatically from what it is today because everything is so dynamic on the internet and on social media. But basically, most of the data I found shows that there are about 317 million unique monthly users on Twitter. Some say as many as 328 million active users, but somewhere in that general range. And they send about 500 million tweets per day. Also, this data shows that 20% of internet users, of men who use the internet, are on Twitter, and 15% of women who use the internet are on Twitter. That data is either a little outdated or from a different research study because that number is actually much closer. It's a very similar percentage of men and women when you look at other sets of data. Again, they're mostly the age range is mostly the 18 to 29-year-olds, so you're going to reach relatively young people. And 53% of people who are on Twitter actually never post any updates. And I have to be honest, I'm kind of in that category. I don't post a ton on Twitter, but when things like the Academy Awards or football games or basketball games or something are going on, I will follow the hashtag just to see what other people are saying. And occasionally I'll I'll like or post or retweet, but most of the time I'm just watching. I'm just monitoring. And so there are a lot of people who apparently do that as well. And the average amount of time that people spend on Twitter's mobile app every day is only about 2.7 minutes. So you have a very small window of time to actually capture someone's attention with a tweet. So let's look at the gender demographics. According to Pew Research, 25% of all female U.S. internet users use Twitter, and 24% of all male U.S. internet users use Twitter. So there's relatively strong similarity there. Although if you were to find stats, which were very difficult to find actually, on the breakdown of actual Twitter users, my guess is that it skews predominantly male, because there are much more male internet users than there are female internet users. So the gender gap is much less pronounced than you would think. In terms of the demographics of age, we've already kind of talked about this. 36% of Twitter users are in the 18 to 29 range, and 23% in the 30 to 49 range. So that's a good 59% who are under the age of 49. So that's a good, younger audience. If you're looking to reach a younger audience, Twitter might be a good way to look at that. They're also very college educated and have a strong income. So 58% of the users have incomes of over $50,000 a year, and 54% have some form of higher education, whether it's some college or actually a college degree or beyond. This is a stat that's changed a lot over time. The gap is definitely narrowing here. Most Twitter accounts are outside the U.S., but in the U.S. itself, users tend to live in urban areas and suburban areas. It used to be, though, that the percentage of rural users was in the teens, and that's actually catching up. So we're seeing more Twitter users demographically located just pretty much anywhere in rural, suburban, and urban areas. In short, though, Twitter will help you reach a younger, college-educated audience if that's what you're looking for. In our next video, we'll talk about setting up a Twitter account.